Go ahead and start, Mr. Wines. I'll call to order tonight's special work session of the Village Council, Monday, May 15th, 2023. Meeting called to order. We'll stand and say pledge of allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Take a quick moment of silence to gather our thoughts and our breath from rushing in here. And if you would, Christian, please do a roll call.
Trustee Fields. Trustee Holmes.
Here.
Trustee Reister.
Here.
Trustee Wagner.
Here.
Trustee Olson.
Here.
President Pro Tem Keller.
Here.
President Frisbee.
Here. We have a full house tonight. We have an agenda in front of us. Is there any changes or additions to this work session agenda, Jim?
No, sir.
I entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Trustee Wagner, support.
Motion made by trustee Keller, support by trustee Wagner. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? We have an agenda. We have no public officials. We have no citizens in the building, and no scheduled appearances, so we'll just jump right down to council action items. The first one being DPW staffing for 2023-2024 full year budget. Budget related to the Department of Public Works, and village staff's recommendation is a motion, support, and approval for the presented DPW staffing for the 2023-2024 full year budget. So we're gonna change a little bit in the way we approach this, just due to typical decorum and this. So, going forward, I would just like to ask if there is a motion, one makes a motion, one makes a second, and then we'll go into discussion prior to the votes. So saying that, we'll let Jim discuss it.
Yes, and this is how we've structured probably now maybe our fifth year. And just to kind of recap with the time available in that is instead of presenting the entire budget on June 26, 2023, what tonight initiates is sections of the budget starting with areas that impact the general fund first. So we'll ask for a motion and support, and then the council's discussion and ultimate vote on each of these areas of the budget. What it also affords us is the opportunity between now and June 26, as we start putting the pieces of this puzzle in front of the council and you see a clear of the big picture, if at a certain point you have ideas, suggestions, or something, and tonight's typical are internal areas, but as we talk about external things, that being roads, parks and rec, areas that the public has input on and see, we certainly would entertain, and that gives us time to implement that and see how much it might impact the overall budget. So that's one reason we do it, instead of just one night being here for 4 to 6 hours to give a time for input. And I think it's important to know as we begin internal preparations for the next fiscal year 6 months prior to any presentation in front of the council. So after it's been historic, including this year, that the third Monday in January was the public audit presentation. And historically, including this past January, we then present our recommendations on where we commit and assign money for our capital improvement projects. That was done this past January. And it gives us a roadmap of what we're saving for. We've already presented to the council this year, knowing the possibility of these purchases occurring in 23, 24, but due to lead time. So the council's already approved a new police cruiser in the associated expenses. You've already approved a DPW 2500 Chevy pickup truck in the plow implements to go with it, knowing that it's a 23, 24 expense if it arrives early, one of them, but we knew due to lead times, we wanted your approval to start that order process. We also approved a 3-wing lawnmower that we were gonna, the rec park in that for. Ultimately, on June 26th, we will present the resolution for the entire budget, which we'll seek approval for. So, tonight and the subsequent meetings leading up to June 26th, again, are approved by the council so we can begin to implement those into the budget and continue this presentation. We'll be talking at the June 5th council meeting on healthcare. We'll probably have a 6:30 Brownfield meeting to take care of that section. On the 19th, it'll be DDA, employee compensation. On the 26th will be utilities, and then the final resolution. And it's scheduling out. I think we can keep this on track to have a smooth night on June 26th. The one other thing leading up before we get into the three specifics is, again, we back on March 18th, we had sent internal documents to the directors requesting them to provide their needs, wants, and wishes for the next fiscal year. And that was going on internally. And then I think it was March 28th, I pulled the data for the past 10 years of all revenue the village has received in the past 10 years to look at 10-year trends, as well as expenditures. We kind of narrowed that down on, since May, we've looked at the past 5 years of trends, as well as our balance sheets and a predictive analysis of where we know next year's funding, what that'll be, but we're projecting out beyond that as well when we, and that effort goes into these summaries you receive. And I think in looking what will, it was actually Trustee Holmes, we kind of narrowed into some data talking points, and those of you that have had to entertain me as I start racing talking about spreadsheets and debits and credits and capital improvement plans, I get all fired up, and Michelle gets fired up because it's vernacular we enjoy, and we look up and sometimes it's not resonating. So maybe Rick Holmes will help me out in layman's term, but I think positive talking points when you look at 5-year trends of the village are, so 5 years ago, we're talking 2018 and 19. And so you have to understand, we as the village of Vicksburg, we operate 9 separate businesses within our budget. We have a general fund, we have major streets, local streets, DDA, brownfield, we have water, sewer, golf, and we have a tax revolving fund, all separate that we're running on the fiscal year, and ultimately, certainly with Christian and Michelle on a daily and weekly basis to operate those. And I think if it's different than the private sector in that we're not making widgets and gadgets, and if we make more, we get more money. We have we have 7 different revenue streams. What impacts our citizens, our millage rate for taxes that we bring in. state shared revenue that we all participate in as well through sales tax in the state. And when you look at those revenue new trends, 5 years ago, it was a little over, our tax base was a little over 1.2 million. The local tax base, due to growth of the village, is over that 5-year period up 24.85%. So we're bringing in more money. The state shared revenue, and state shared revenue is tied to population, and the popularity of the village of Vicksburg grew by well over 1,000 residents from census to census. So 5 years ago, about $240,000 of state shared revenue was provided by the state. And this past year is about 440,000, and we anticipate close to 500,000 in the next fiscal year. On a percentage level, that's over 45% increase on that revenue stream. So then you look how are you performing some benchmarks for an organization. What's your value, what's your assets, and you have physical assets, you have cash assets, and move along. In 2018, cash assets on hand were about just over $1 million for cash assets. And 5 years later, it's 74% higher at over $4 million. Now, a large portion of that will be expensed in 23-24 because that's the cash that's been saved up for the municipal building. But we also can talk about hard assets over the last 5 years, a DPW building for $425,000, your pickup trucks, your patrol cars, the crane truck, though they were used, it still improved the assets of the dump truck, plow truck, the vac truck. So all of your indicators of revenue we have document of the last 5 years is again anywhere from 24% local tax revenue, 45% state revenue. Cash assets went up by 74%, and your physical assets certainly went up as well, the value of the village. So then you look at expenditures. That's all great unless you're spending more than you're still bringing in. That's not so good. And a lot of individuals, unfortunately, we know data live their personal finances that way. But in the village, the expenses over that time, and this is all expenses, is 13.2% over 5 years. That's not each year, that's not in 1 year. We're only 13% above what we were expending 5 years ago. And when we talk on June 5th about healthcare, we'll dive into these numbers a little bit deeper to show what's been done to keep those costs reasonable, fair, and also provide the appropriate benefit for an employee. And I think that's one thing our full-time staff has and that's police officers in DPW have been pretty loyal to the village, and we'd like that to continue. But I just want to highlight for the council and public that there's hundreds of hours that go into prepping this budget months in advance, and to look at right now tonight the 3 summaries, it's not just a plug and present. It actually very confident that we're going to present the overall budget, and we will on the 26th, when it's all finalized, be able to tell you how much it's over the previous budget, and that if it is, once this short 6 weeks goes by quick. So I'll pause there, answer any questions, but I thought it was just to give a little background at a high level of revenue and expenses and kind of track work, which gets us to this point. But if someone has a question on that, I'd be happy to answer it. Specific to the DPW, Again, looking at $499,575. In a 5-year trend, that's $36,929 less than the high. It does have an increase over last year's budget, but that's largely due to the purchase of a 2024 new pickup truck and presenting. We have an opportunity, I've spoken with James Baker at the Public Works City of Kalamazoo, and we have the opportunity, which I'm recommending the council to approve, to purchase used dump truck, plow truck with a fairly new salter for $20,000. It's a piece of equipment that's right around $200,000 brand new. And for what it could service the village, really will help out as the last one 3 years ago that we purchased from the city did. So that's when the pickup truck and plow, just that's already been approved was $66,000. This $20,000, now you're $86,000 of those expenses. So, same amount of staffing, five individuals. We added that fifth a couple years ago. I did put in that, and I just bring it narratively in front of the council. We're really going to examine in January of '24 the need, if there is one, to add part-time summer staff. But if we do, we will make that part of the second quarter budget amendments, or at no later than third quarter, if we feel that investment is warranted with the workload. And I think at 7 o'clock, I think most council members are aware that we're going to be celebrating. I'm forced to use that word. I love the guy, but finding a new DPW director, because Randy has reached an opportunity to retire in the next few months here. So we are looking for a director of DPW, and we can get into that more at 7 o'clock and into the future. So that has an impact as well on why I wanted to just bring in front of you, looking at the potential for part-time people. So any questions? Like I said, 5 full-time employees. We have the maintenance of the infrastructure, capital investments of a 2024 pickup truck, the plow truck. We're full service water and sewer. I asked Randy today. It's, again, I don't know how useful the information is. I think you find it interesting. The village has 18.1 miles of sanitary sewer lines that run through it, and 28.5 miles of water mains that run through the village, as well as 12 lift stations that are the infrastructure package for water and sewer.
What was the water again, please?
The water is 20, don't put the camera on me, Christian, they'll think I have this to memory. 28.5 miles of water lines and 18.1 sanitary. So we also have the 8 parks: recreational park, historic village, Sunset Beach, obviously the special requests for events. In the summer, we're the Berg Days of Summer and all of that. The crew's been fantastic. We have winter and summer maintenance of roadways. Are looking to continue because of the work that they do on our own vehicles. Excuse me. We budgeted $2,000 for additional mechanical tools that will aid them in maintenance of our own equipment. So with that, I'll pause for any questions specific to our recommendations, reference the Department of Public Works.
Questions for staff? Thank you, Jim. So we have a request of staff to enter into a motion to support and approval for the presented DPW staffing for the 2023-2024 full year budget. It's the desires of this council.
Trustee Wagner, I move that we approve.
Trustee Reister, support.
Motion made by trustee Wagner, support by trustee Reister. We'll do a roll call, please, Christian.
Trustee Reister,
Yes.
trustee Beals, trustee Olson,
Yes.
trustee Wagner,
Yes.
trustee Holmes,
Yes.
President Pro Tem Keller,
Yes.
President Frisbee.
Yes, motion carries. Thank you. And now we want to address the police staffing for 2023, 2024 full year budget. What Jim,
Yeah, it's the same, holds true. I'll get into what I anticipate in the future for the police department as well. We are talking the 23, 24 activity level proposed budget, at $775,875. It's a 7.7% increase from last year's. That predominantly, our officers, we have 3 of them going from 3 years experience to 4 years. So within the contract, when we ratified the contract, those step raises due to experience, which is pretty universal in police departments to have that impacted, as well as we just entered into an agreement with the police officers for a 4-year contract. And if you remember, I give credit to them because for the 3 years previous, they took a lower base wage and a merit. And I applaud the council. This 4-year contract just has the base rate increase for them, which impacts that increase to the overall budget. But again, the area of law enforcement is one that is we're lacking qualified candidate pool. It's a profession that the data shows people are not moving from high school into college, and with the state requirements, which we certainly support having the requirements that MCOLS for the state of Michigan has as minimum expectations to be a police officer in our state. But the reality is the candidate pool is not as large as it once was. We see all kinds of incentives from larger departments, lateral transfers to, if you're at step 4 here, we'll move you in step 4, signing bonuses of up to $15,000, $20,000. Even smaller departments having signing bonuses as recruitment. So it's we're proud to keep the full-time staffing that we've had. We do have 1 part-time officer. We like to have upwards to 2 or 3. But the climate that we're right in now with available candidates makes it tough. Having said that, I'm going to jump. What we're analyzing internally is for the 24-25 fiscal year to evaluate. Part of the increase is the overtime, where part-time officers used to fill gap when we had an officer out for military leave, out for vacation, whatever. We would plug in a part-time officer to, let's say if someone's gone a week on vacation, the part-time officer works that week at the part-time rate. If we don't have the part-time officers, another officer fills that at an overtime rate. So our overtime expense is going up due to that. And what we'll evaluate is when we hit the point that it's a better investment to put on an additional full-time officer that would give flexibility for those fill spots, because it's not only a monetary thing. More critical is we don't want to burn our young officers out by having them work 4, 5, 6 days a week to cover these shifts. If it's more practical to get another full-time officer and carry this thing out. Again, not presenting it tonight, but I certainly want you aware of Chief Sanderson and I are aware and monitoring what is going on. He certainly has the mission, and I know he is working with his staff to attract part-time officers that would be qualified to work in Vicksburg, and we will continue that. However, if we're unsuccessful, I want you to also know we're analyzing that possibility in the future of adding to the staff full-time. Apologize. But its highlights for the budget are, again, a chief and 5 full-time officers, including the school resource officer, 24/7 police service and protection. That's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for our community. Only, it's noteworthy for a community our size, and I thought it would start a trend. I would still recommend it, but all of our officers being medical first responders to have the training to respond in village limits to medical emergencies. And if there's a gap between the firefighters arriving on scene, it's twofold. Our officer could beat them to the scene, but it's a partnership where certainly if we have a medical emergency, both fire department and police department are working together for the benefit of our resident or visitors. And we will certainly continue to respond to that. I am, everyone here knows, I believe my background is from this area. I'm inflexible in my feelings of how police officers and police departments should operate and interact with the citizens. And we will continue to have a procedural justice-based service with a commitment to treating everyone with dignity and respect. They'll continue canvassing all businesses. Will be continued to be checked nightly. Customer service follow-ups to make sure we're delivering the service and treating people, and I'm happy to report we are. I'm very, very proud of the entire staff we have in our police organization. Organized interactions with the youth of Vicksburg. Again, daily visuals of drop-off and pickup times at the school and special events that we have. Equipment-wise, updating our preliminary breath test machines is going to be a capital investment we make in this budget, as well as it'll be AED machines, not just batteries, but moving as the county is to that, as well as putting a protective, what some would term a ballistic shield in each of our patrol cars. Unfortunately, we've all seen news in and across America, but these shields will give needed protection and if an incident were to arise that one of our officers are responding to. It's a very small investment of about $4,500, I believe, but to have that equipment in the car is certainly a positive thing. We'll continue our training. We have online training relationships with Police One and Caliber Press, both truly internationally recognized organizations to provide training. Last year, we sent an officer to become a firearms instructor, and we have put money in the budget. If the appropriate not in-person training comes up, that we'll have money in the budget, that the chief's flexible to be able to send that. So I'll pause there, and certainly if there's a motion of support through your conversation after, or if there's questions, I'll be happy to answer it.
Tim, can I ask a question? Jim, do we have defibrillators in all our vehicles?
Yes.
Okay. And right off the bat, do you have any idea how many officers Schoolcraft has? Because I believe they're a lot less than we are.
I know they're less. I do not know the total number.
Last I heard, it was like 1 full-time and 2 part-time.
Yeah, I don't know. I know they have a
Well, I think
chief.
it's something that we should be proud of, that we have the department that we have. And I know that they back us up and we back them up, so we have a good working relationship, but I think it's something we ought to be proud of, that we have the department that we have. So, thank you.
Jim, looking at the amount of the allocation is 775, it's about 39% of the general fund. And I'm not saying that critically, I'm actually saying that I did some research on this some years ago, and I believe that's right in line with what rural communities our size are right around there. And so, in all transparency, before I joined this council, I actually was somewhat critical of that number, knowing that it's a sizable line item in the budget. And the more that I became involved in the village governance, I realized the importance of public safety. And actually, I would say it's a close second to fire in this community. Between the fire department and police, I'd say it's 1 and 2. DPW running a close third, I will say. But with that being said, I am very thankful for the bullet points that you outlined, because I think it's really important people in the community know what this large expenditure is going for. It's a sense of security, it's a sense of safety, and it's understanding and knowing that a short phone call away is help whenever you need it. And I can tell you in those instances, whether it was a break into my house, whether it was an accident, whether, locked out of my car, our public safety department has always been there. And I think this is a really good investment.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have a request from the staff to, recommendation and motion and support and approval of the presented police staffing 2023-2024 full year budget. So I ask this council, what's their desire? We can get a motion of support.
Trustee Holmes, make a motion that we support.
Trustee Olson, I second.
Okay, like I said earlier, I know it's gonna take a little bit for us to get into a different swing of things, but now is the time for the discussion. And that's all right, we kind of changing the protocol to kind of follow more governance. Robert's rule, so, one of the questions I had for Jim, and this is only for my own edification, is do we reach out to the sheriff's department or anybody like that when we are looking for part-time help or event help?
Well,
or is it-
yeah, right now in the last I knew, the sheriff's department is down about 40 positions. And we have that many open. So everyone, the city of Kalamazoo just in the last couple of weeks announced another big recruiting effort because of the positions they have open in that. So, yeah, we certainly, we still get assistance through the sheriff's department and the services they provide, whether that's the laboratory, the jail, if the road patrol backs us up as well as we back them up. Trustee Olson was correct. Village of Schoolcraft and us certainly help each other out. But even if it's heading in a non-village territory, we often are backing up a county deputy. And if we need that backup, they are certainly on the way as well. As well as, it's not as often, but we certainly have the state police as a resource too. But everyone's in the same boat.
That's, I guess, part of my inquiries. We're all vying for the same resources. And,
Yeah, and it was part, and we don't need to go in the history. We've talked about it before of the department, but we've now, to enter a 4-year contract, I would, if I didn't feel this way, I'd avoid saying it, but we can be proud of the individuals that make up our police department because they're all in for the village. They get asked to, someone's on vacation for 2 weeks. They have no problem going out and checking that house every day for 2 weeks to see if something's wrong. You don't hear the negativity that once vibrated this community of interactions of our officers. They're human beings. I've, you know, and I know the chief's watching on YouTube, so I know, I'm not jinxing us. I get it, they're human beings, and people, including myself, have a bad moment. But they truly represent this village with a high level of professionalism, and I think they all get along, and they should be proud of their accomplishments individually and collectively. So our game is we have a great department, let's hold these officers here.
Yeah, respect and retain. Any other questions of staff or comments you'd like to make? Yes.
So Jim, we briefly touched, I think on that kind of the 30% of, or 39% of general fund, for the expense. Do you have like another ballpark or reference that other municipalities would use to key in that?
Yeah, a ballpark, especially for a larger department, is anything under 50% of your general fund budget that would be a bench. If you're coming in 60-some%, then flag. Anything under 50, pretty happy. At the end on the 26th, when we know the total budget, I think the numbers are going to be close within a few percentage points. The uniqueness of the village budget is, like on the audit, when they talk about public safety, that includes our expenses on the fire side. And there's one other section. So and I appreciate the council's vigilance on the budget process of South County Fire, as well as potential capital purchases, because that impacts these entities to a great degree. And I know that they're making the efforts to project out how much that'll be, so. In the city of Kalamazoo, your public safety budget's all internal, so you know your expense of police and fire.
Any further discussion, comments?
Thank you.
So we have a motion made by trustee Holmes, a support by trustee Olson. We'll do a roll call, please, Christian.
Trustee Holmes,
Yes.
trustee Wagner,
Yes.
trustee Fields,
Yes.
President Pro Tem Keller,
Yes.
trustee Olson,
Yes.
trustee Reister,
Yes.
President Frisbee.
Yes. Motion carries. So now we have the village office staff 2023-2024 full year budget related to director of finance, village clerk, and village office staff. The village staff is recommending a motion of support and approval for the presented 2023-2024 full year budget. We'll let Jim speak to those.
On that right now, we have budgeted for a 25-hour employee that's a position unfilled, and we have not posted yet. We know Diane had quite an opportunity that she went for. We're still internally looking at how best to set the office up, maybe not today, but actually 12 and 18 months from now. At a certain point, I'm going to highlight, because it's what first is all these departments are divided out, but we might as well talk about the guy who never gets the camera put on him because he's operating. That's Mr. Christian Wines. And we're now 13, 14 months into this, and I think it's been very nice. I hope Christian knows that we're trying to pace this at a pace that he can acquire this information or task without feeling overwhelmed. And in talking to Christian, he has a desire on the accounting side and the financial side, and an interest. So to have someone like Michelle Morgan to be able to mentor him in that area, he's committed to getting a master's degree. We have a policy here in the village that allows for tuition reimbursement. So part of this overall makeup in the budget, I want to highlight that's a little bit, we haven't had it in the past, is it's my recommendation that we see that as an investment into Christian, and that we would reimburse 50% of those expenses up to $5,000. And sometimes it gets uncomfortable when the person's in the room, but I have no uncomfortableness in saying he's worth it. So that is highlighted in this section. And we're going to see how that progresses internally. I'm sure he'll have outstanding, and I know, be it that he's getting this master's degree from just an outstanding Western Michigan University, and to become a Bronco will have no problem in the future. But go ahead.
Point of, I assume he didn't apply to any other place.
Well, if you're accepted at the best in the state, you might as well just stick with it. The
Laws would disagree with you.
yeah. The inside joke has now gotten outside. The other, so we're seeing the internal Christians taking on more of those roles with Michelle's mentoring. Michelle is picking up the heavy load because the functions that Diane did 24 hours a week heavily fall to Michelle Morgan during this time. And so as we go, we're going to evaluate it, and at a certain point within the budget, we have these hours at a pay rate we think someone would be worth to fill that role Diane filled. If we get to, we'll certainly come to the council and let you know and get a second approval of saying, okay, we're going to post this position as described, to get council input and ultimately approval. What that could be is we will first seek that as a part-time status. If we don't feel comfortable with the pool of candidates, we could amend and look at full-time status with, so that's the variables we're still going to see here in the next 3-4 months. And Michelle's on YouTube too, so hopefully that's within the time frame, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 months, something like that. It'll be sooner rather than later because she is picking up the workload. So that's within the budget. You have the so to go through them real quick, your 213 is really in the office staff, non-clerk, non-treasurer. You have a decrease of 31%. That's because we do not have the director of community engagement, so it's saving that money. That's where your substantial savings is. The accounts payable position, and not to get confusing, but these positions are all not only funded in part by the general fund, but other enterprise funds, water, sewer, and golf, and you can see the breakout percentages. So when you see the accounts payable position allocation of $16,000, your question might be, how in the world can you hire someone for that? Well, that's actually 25% of the funding. The other portions of this funding will come later when we present those enterprise funds. Your customer service, that right now is Teresa, who does first we had 2 people doing the job, and Teresa's just been phenomenal. So we'll talk more about that on the 19th of June. But that's that position. 215 is what we just talked about, the clerk's position. And well, we missed the treasurer's in here at 253. Highlighted there. And then the municipal building fund is used for needed office supplies. There is a reduction in the municipal building fund. The main reason that is, it would take a critical situation, the plumbing fails in the bathrooms, for us to recommend putting money in a building we know we're gonna tear down within 15 months at the latest. So we've readjusted those budget expectations. I think it was 3 years ago, we took some asbestos out, which was $10,000. And so the historical trend is up, but we're just not going to invest money in a building we're gonna tear down, and keep up. So that's why that accounts for that significant reduction. But again, I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Move to support.
Trustee Fields, I second.
President Frisbee, if I could. Just a comment to my fellow trustees, and that is, I support what Jim has put forward, and actually in sitting with him this morning, and I appreciate his patience with me, and the level of detail we got into, I feel comfortable in saying that. The one thing I would say, or would just call attention to, I shouldn't say, call attention to, is the fact that 2 or 3 years ago, the village did take it upon itself to make sure we were competitive in compensation of our people. And we went to MML, and we were, I believe, if I remember right, President Frisbee, help me if I'm wrong, but we're in like the lower third, and to make us more competitive, we in some instances, we largely increased compensation. I would just ask that in moving forward, or suggest, I should say, that we continue to monitor MML as it relates to what compensation is. The other thing I would like to ask, I don't know if this is a proper forum, if it's at a later date, or even if I suggest it to the Human Resources Committee, but is it possible, as it relates to pay increases, that it's more like a review basis where there's goals, objectives, like you see in other professions? It seems to me that this is more, what I'm seeing, it seems to me that it's more along the lines of, the pay increases are more, they're called merit-based, but my question is that what is merit? Is it the village manager's perspective, or is there a basis for, those suggested increases?
The factors, and it'll be presented to the full council on June 19th. There'll be contact with both the HR committee and finance committee prior to that. But the factors currently that's looked at are compensation levels for the positions in comparable municipalities. What is the current wage structure for those positions? Positions being village manager, treasurer, clerk, police chief, we're director of finance, so not. So to look at comparable municipalities first, are we in line? Because we were in the bottom third. We with DPW and the village manager's position was at the time, because we had hired a treasurer and police chief, they were mid-pack to slightly below mid-pack. We did a correction, let's say, that moved the DPW director and village manager to the 50% mark, and the treasurer and police chief up a little bit. So those factors that determine that are still present. In the last year, we gave a 3% raise, while if other municipalities gave 5.5%. Now, is it trailing again? The other is cost of living, to look at what impacts are on, and I think that's a little over 7%. The other items we look is what other municipalities given in the calendar year 2023, regardless of what their fiscal year, if it starts January 1, July 1, February or October. So that, all of that data is analyzed to what ultimately ends up being for all the positions besides mine, that is the basis for my recommendation. The one thing in the past, especially early on, it was very conservative quote. Everyone's at literally, I think it was 1 or 2%. And I think last year was the first year we ever gave a 3% raise. During COVID, we suspended, on like many municipalities, we didn't give a raise till we saw the impact of COVID. And then that's when that fall, the MML study was done. And then January 21 gave a mid-year, you'd call it, I guess, raise. And as I'm talking out loud, I even think the council approved back paying because we knew, so the employee was made whole for the full year, now that I'm speaking out loud. So all of those variables go in. On performance-based is what I would term it. For every position but mine, I would be the one evaluating and providing those recommendations. And then for, the council sets, if they wanted to move to a performance-based, and let's talk about my position, we would just, whatever the performance expectations are, make them high, because I'll exceed them and write the check, Mr. Holmes. Is that appropriate? I apologize if that wasn't appropriate.
No, I do appreciate that, Jim, and it's with all due respect to everybody. Again, it's just the world that I'm coming from. I mean, in the headlines, Microsoft's not giving any pay increases this year, one of the largest companies in the world.
Yeah.
As an example, and I do understand, again, the environment we're in and want to retain staff. Again, it's just an observation, being here 5 years, one of the things that I do feel that is fairly consistent, and that is that it does seem as if we are continuing to retain staff and to pay them fairly, that we are increasing it. And I just want to make sure, again, that Jim and staff as well as council, do keep an eye on it. That's all I'm saying.
I think one of the things we found through my experience through the working in conjunction with the MML on that specific study, one of the things in government, you have tenure, like an incentive to stay tenure-wise, you have an incentive to use different vernacular, but unlike the private sector, and my 3 adult college-educated sons are all in the private sector, all 3 in the sales world. So they have a built-in incentive. If they sell, there's a commission, and especially if it's new business, it might be a higher commission than repeat business. And in government, you don't have some of those built-in matrix where a company can see, okay, person A generated X amount of revenue, which benefited the company, therefore we'll give Y to that employee. So that's where I think historically government, it's been easier to stay away from that. I think my experience, I believe, for my position, the council has discussions that, they'd have to comment on it, but I think starts at the human resource level, then you all have input on a performance. We've discussed this with the human resource committee of changing, really, let's use the word improving that evaluation form that you fill out on me, that probably is a traditional governmental form. And that might be the first step, is to look at what works in the business private sector to evaluate, let's say, a senior manager and let's look at and use that form for an evaluation. That could be a certain first step. But I think predominantly in government, you're gonna look at comparable municipalities, comparable positions, and what's fair.
President Frisbee?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I don't want to belabor because I know we're pushing against it. So first I'm going to call previous question, but then I'm going to make a statement. First thing I learned at the Central Michigan University was that government is not run as a business. We have a managerial form of government. We rely on a hired professional to run the daily activities of the village. Obviously, he or she does it with our approval. We rely on that professional to staff his personnel and to oversee that staff. And I understand what Trustee Holmes is saying, and just clarifying that, I don't think we want to get into the weeds of getting performance evaluations of every department head, because we would be here for hours to do that. I mean, we're relying on him and his expertise to do that for us. And if he's wrong, it's gonna bear out, and, then we move there. But I do call previous question.
Thank you. No, I agree with that statement, because the HR group is HR related in the sense of the village manager, and internally, we don't have oversight. Now, I'll have to read the Robert's Rules of Order a little bit tighter on that, but I'm.
Calling the vote.
He's calling the vote. That's what he's doing.
All right, so we have a request in front of us. We have a President Pro Tem Keller motion to support by Trustee Fields. Any further questions on this?
Called the vote. Let's vote.
We'll take a roll call, please.
Trustee Wagner,
Yes.
Trustee Fields, Trustee Olson,
Yes.
Trustee Reister,
Yes.
Trustee Holmes,
Yes.
President Pro Tem Keller,
Yeah.
President Frisbee.
Yes, motion carries. Thanks. So we jump down to trustees' time. Mr. Olson, Trustee Olson?
I'll pass until the council meeting.
Thank you. Trustee Wagner?
Likewise.
Trustee Reister?
Likewise.
Trustee Fields? Trustee Holmes?
I'm good.
President Pro Tem Carl Keller?
I'm good.
As is I. So I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved?
All those in favor say aye. Aye. We'll take a little quick break for those in need. Motion May 15, 2023, Village Council regular session. Meeting's called to order. Will you join us in pledge of allegiance, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all for coming tonight. So we'll take a moment here to gather our thoughts and get this meeting rolling. Christian Wines, if you would, sir, please take a roll call.
Trustee Olson. Trustee Wagner.
Here.
Trustee Reister.
Here.
Trustee Fields. Here. Trustee Holmes.
Here.
President Pro Tem Keller.
Here.
President Frisbee.
Here. Full house. We have an agenda in front of us. We have a couple of additions that we need to put in. We have a resolution, pension resolution. Where would you like to,
I'd like to add 10C, be a presentation and update by Mr. Kyle Mucha on the master plan at 10C. At 10D will be President Frisbee's recommendation for council approval to appointment to the Parks and Rec Committee, Cindy Hetrick. And E will be Resolution 05152023-02, and that will be a resolution reference pension in budgeting with the state of Michigan. Yeah.
any other changes, the council or action items you want to add on there? If not, we have a revised agenda in front of us. What's this council's desire?
Move as amended.
Trustee Wagner, support.
Motion made by President Pro Tem Keller, support by Trustee Wagner. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? We have an agenda in front of us. We have no public officials this evening. We have time for citizens' comments for the agenda that's in front of us tonight. If anybody would like to speak to that, now's the time to do that. Seeing none, we'll move on to Mr. Andrew Horn, who's going to.
If
We have to move the public.
If we can wait,
Yeah.
he's just listed as a scheduled appearance, but he'll be handling the public hearing that's at 10A. If we can go through the general consent agenda and then.
So we have a general consent in front of us, an agenda in front of us from last week's or May 1st meeting. We have warrant reports total of $188,086.58. We have the third quarter budget amendments in our document package and the event requests. So I appreciate some of the event requesters. You know, we've got the Vicksburg Pathways for June 7th, the Old Car Fest for June 9 and 10. And Gilbert graduation party, July 8th, the Valley Family Church for July 27th, and the Harvest Festival for September 24th. And thank you for the Harvest Festival for being so timely and getting that application in early. Thank you. Is there any comments, clarifications, or corrections in the minutes? Do we have a consent agenda in front of us? What's this council's desire?
Trustee Reister, so moved.
Trustee Fields, support.
Is there any further comments on this?
President Frisbee? Just making a note that the third quarter budget amendments, I'm assuming were all supported by the Finance Committee prior to being put into the consent agenda, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. That's just for the record, so.
All right, so trustee Reister, motion, what did I put on here? Was it trustee Fields, you support? I spelled your name wrong, sorry. We'll do a roll call, please, Christian.
Trustee Reister.
Yes.
Trustee Wagner.
Yes.
Trustee Fields. Trustee Olson,
Yes.
Trustee Holmes,
Yes.
President Pro Tem Keller,
Yes.
President Frisbee.
Yes. Thank you all. So it moves us to village council action items. 10A, we have we need to move into a public hearing to go on with the adoption of our code ordinance. So I'll entertain a motion to move into a public hearing.
So moved.
Second, Holmes.
Any further discussion on that? We have a motion by President Pro Tem Keller, support by Trustee Holmes. We'll do all those, we'll have to do a roll call, please, if you would.
Trustee Holmes,
Yes.
Trustee Wagner,
Yes.
Trustee Fields, Trustee Reister,
Yes.
President Pro Tem Keller,
Yes.
Trustee Olson,
Yes.
President Frisbee.
Yes. We now are in a public hearing, and we'd like to have Mr. Andrew Horn.
2021, in fall of 2021, a couple of years before that, the village undertook the idea of recodification process, which is, there we go. Which goes through the code, making sure it's up to date, making sure it's in compliance with state law, federal law, anything like that. They hired General Code out of New York, and General Code went through and found a number of updates that were needed. They contacted village staff, and then in the fall of 2021, the adoption ordinance that you have in front of you was actually approved by council. The issue is that shortly thereafter, due to a publication issue, it was never actually enacted. So we went ahead, or village staff contacted us and said, hey, listen, we got to make sure that we get this done correctly. And I know Chief Sanderson was pretty key on that and finding some of the things that needed updated further. More so than that, we went through and I'm not going to go into details. It was nobody on staff, was in our office, but somebody made decisions to take everything in the code and make it a municipal civil violation. It was just an error, an oversight. Again, this wasn't your village staff that did this, your current village staff. And so when that was caught, it's actually a blessing in disguise that this wasn't eventually published, that it wasn't enacted, because we worked with village code general code this past fall and winter, and we're able to get those parts essentially removed. So what you have in front of you is an adoption of the current ordinance, or going forward what will be, or proposed ordinance, adopting the code for what it is today. It goes through exactly what general code found that needed updating. It went back through, general code went back through and removed any idea that everything is a municipal civil violation. And instead, Chief Sanderson and his team can go through and prosecute things as misdemeanors or according to the uniform state code or law or anything like that. So it's absolutely necessary, but again, it was really a blessing in disguise that the village was made aware of it, and it's corrected by the ordinance you have in front of you. So the code adoption ordinance itself is just an indication that the code, as general code has come up with, is being adopted. If there's any overlapping issues, if there's any discrepancy, then the current and state approved code, our code, the village code, reigns over the older code. So in other words, just by way of example, we had one provision in our old code where any water service or sewer service outside of the village limits that used village pipes was charged at 200% the rate of village rates. it used to be perfectly fine. It's no longer perfectly fine. So those are the types of things that general code went through and said, okay, well, these things have to be updated to be brought compliant. And that's exactly what they did there. The adoption ordinance goes through, it says any future amendments obviously have to be brought through the same process through the village council. There are a number of ordinances out there that need to be updated, that need to be added, or even potentially deleted. Those are gonna come before the council one at a time. I know, again, Chief Sanderson's been very key in streamlining that and saying, hey, listen, I've gone through the entire code. These are the ones that we need to be able to enforce around town. So I think in the near future, you'll start seeing those come before you as council. Again, what you have in front of you is just focused on making sure everything's compliant. In addition to the ordinance itself, there's a Schedule A with all the individual amendments that were done to the code. So, I mean, that's an outline of everything that's been changed. So, for example, it's adopted the state uniform traffic code, which was previously not adopted. There are still municipal civil infractions, but they're limited to things that are more localized. They are not nuisances, anything that makes our police department, our public safety officers able to actually enforce, and the legal team that litigates these able to enforce our ordinances, the better for us. So that all being said, going forward, after tonight, if the council approves this, the adoption ordinance, we'll make sure that within the next 15 days, this is published in general circulation. It will be effective upon approval and publication, or the notice of publication, which again will take place in the next 2 weeks. At that point, there's nothing else that the village needs to do. It's enacted. It will be live on the website, and copies are always going to be available in Village Hall. So, happy to answer any questions that you have.
Yeah, so as we go, and if there's other ordinances that need to be addressed, who actually does the legalese on that? We come to our legal municipal group, ask for guidance on it. We make a vote on a change of wording. And then where does it go from there? I mean, who changes the actual code? Who's responsible for that?
Great question. So it really comes down to the provision that we're changing. So you have another attorney that works with the village who their team is very highly trained or specialized in water and sewer. And Jim was able to get to them and say, hey, listen, we need modifications to this right here. And so they are the ones that are going to draft that, present it to council. And then at that point, it's just about publication. The nice thing about general code, this company you hired, is that all you're going to end up doing is sending it over there once it's approved, and then everything online is automatically updated through their website. There's no longer, we're not supplementing anything. We're not saying, hey, listen, was this ever there? Is that an ordinance, or excuse me, ordinance enacted? It's always going to be right online and right at Village Hall. And it's general code's responsibility after tonight to do that. So.
I just had another question about section, because what else do you do on Mother's Day evening but sit down and read the revisions in these ordinances? Section 475-4 is adding definitions for the following items. Do we actually list out a definition for each and every example in there? Animal hospitals, bed and breakfast, they all have a...
We do not. More often than not, what you will do is find them either in past cases that have come before courts, or their state laws or their state definitions by statute. The best example I can think of is when I was here a couple months ago, we talked about drive-throughs versus drive-ins, and all those definitions came from state statutes. So if it's not specifically in here, it's going to be found somewhere in Michigan law.
Because that double the size of the ordinance, the code book with,
There's a lot.
I would say the nicest thing is you have it all in one place. I mean, the number of times we've looked for things and we've said, well, is it legitimately, is it in this file, is it in that file? It literally will be online for everybody. You're able to search it, you're able to access anything you need.
Just to clarify, and I think I know the answer, I just want to make sure that this is clear. This is what we're looking to adopt here is more acknowledging the administration of this. And during the past couple of years, laws and ordinances were being correctly enforced. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, I just want to make sure there's no disinformation in the community that we were charging felonies for jaywalking or something like that. So it's,
Nope.
okay.
Absolutely. There were actually 3 instances where we talked to the attorney who was litigating municipal civil infractions, and that's where this all came up. And they said, fortunately, it was all done correctly. So yeah, everything's been enforced. This will just make our public safety officers able to actually enforce it to the greatest extent possible. Yep.
any other questions of Mr. Horn? No? Thank you, Andrew.
No.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
We get excited again because we thought we had done this already, but we get to do it again. But I appreciate very much your business and your time to help us through this. So we have a request from staff to accept into code this Schedule A and the codification of our ordinance. Yes. We do have time for citizens' comments at this time. If anybody would like to comment to this specific ordinance and code adoption, now's the time to do it. Hearing none, we'll move on. We have council member comments. If anybody has, Mr. Olson? Mr. Wagner? Ms. Reister? Ms. Fields? Mr. Holmes? Mr. Keller? I'm good myself. So we'll entertain a motion to close this public hearing.
So moved.
Support?
Motion by trustee Keller. In support by trustee Wagner.
Just tell
We'll
me.
do a roll call, please, Christian.
Wagner,
Yes.
trustee Fields, trustee Olson,
Yes.
trustee Holmes,
Yes.
trustee Reister,
Yes.
President Pro Tem Keller,
Yes.
President Frisbee.
Yes. Am I getting too slow for you?
Yeah, a little bit.
So we have a request by the village staff and our attorney. We're recommending a motion to support and approval of this resolution, 05152023-01, adopting a code adoption ordinance. What is this council's desire?
Trustee Reister, so moved.
Trustee Fields, support.
Is there any further discussion on this? Hearing none, we'll do a roll call, please, Christian.
Trustee Fields, trustee Olson,
Yes.
trustee Reister,
Yeah.
trustee Holmes,
Yes.
trustee Wagner,
Yes.
President Pro Tem Keller,
Yes.
President Frisbee.
Yes, motion carries. Thank you.
President Frisbee,
Sir?
if it's okay with the council, I have 2 things. One, Mr. Horn is a father, and I promised him he doesn't have to sit through the rest of this 3.5-hour meeting. But while he is in the room, I want to thank him for his efforts on this, but also on Property Act that we're acquiring as the village here will be closing on in the next few weeks that was approved by the council on some industrial land that Andrew's been diligent on and completed. So I do thank him for that as he's in the room, but wanting to honor his time. I don't think anyone here will be taken aback if.
No, we appreciate your due diligence on closing that deal for us.
I do have additional outside of Mr. Horn, but I wanted to recognize our county commissioner had snuck in, Wendy Maisner. So I did not know we do have public officials. It should be known for the citizens in the room and the citizens on YouTube. It's certainly nice. I know the third Monday of the month works in her schedule, and that's not that she'll be here every third Monday, but tonight. So if the village president would, if we can back up, if the county commissioner has anything to say, or you have questions for the county commissioner, she is present. So I do
Absolutely.
apologize for not seeing her enter the room.
So John walks in with the flag on. Maybe you could put the flag on and wait. No. But certainly, we appreciate you being here, and if you'd like to speak to us now, absolutely, we'll open up the floor. Well, thank you for
President
being
Frisbee,
here.
can I say something?
Yes.
I asked her when she came in if she knew what the new county road commission building is going to cost. She said she was willing to look into it. If you have not been out there and you're in the neighborhood, that's Kilgore Road and 26th Street, so it's east of Sprinkle. That thing is massive. I have no idea what it's going to cost. I will go home and research it myself too, but I've been driving by for the last few weeks, and that thing is something that I believe is never going to stop growing. It's just that whole area down through there, warehouses are popping up, factories are popping up. So the corridor on Kilgore between 26 and Sprinkle is just growing massive. New warehouses, new factories, new everything going in there. It's just amazing. But our county road commission is amongst the biggest in the area. And I think if any of you are out that way, you should swing around, take a look at it. And I hope they do an open house, as I hope they do an open house on the new county courthouse. I remember going to those over the years when Fisher Body opened up and everything else. And it's always amazing how big these places are, but what they do inside those buildings. So I wanted to thank you.
So it takes us to a master plan update, 10C.
Yes, everyone here is aware of Kyle Mucha. Appreciate Kyle updated the planning commission last Monday, and I asked him to come in front of the council. So we'll turn it over to Mr. Mucha on the master plan.
Thank you, Mr. Mallory. As Mr. Mallory indicated, we did present some of our key findings so far throughout the master plan process to the Planning Commission last week. He felt to be prudent to also bring the council up to speed of kind of what's been going on in the background over the past few months since we've had our public engagement, since we've been doing some text editing as well in the background. So as an overview, again, we found it might be helpful to kind of discuss just briefly what a master plan is. In essence, it is your guiding visionary document for the municipality. It helps you get from where you are currently and then where you want to go in 5, 10, 20 years from there. There's a little definition up there that MAP, the Michigan Association of Planning, describes as master plans. In essence, again, the Planning Commission kind of acts as your steward of your master plan, while the municipal governing body helps drive it as well. So that's what your master plan does. The village last updated theirs in 2014, 2015. So in 2022, we began the process again to update it and keep it current with trends and public participation, which brings me to the next section there. Community engagement. I think as the council is aware, we did host an online public survey. We received 100 responses. That was open from August, September till about the beginning of the year. So we had it open for 3 to 4 months, received 100 respondents online for that. Out of the 100 respondents, we found that indicated to us about 63% really valued the sense of community for the village of Vicksburg, followed closely by the area schools, and then from there, the location in the greater Kalamazoo area as well. So all positive things we like to see, that the sense of community was a big component, especially for a village that continues to grow, but yet is tiny in essence as well. From there, we asked what can be approved upon, and this was from, again, the online survey. The SurveyMonkey itself was the host for this. What can be approved? The list were retail options at 42 respondents, more transportation options at 36, and then offer more entertainment, dining, and nightlife options at 34. Those kind of improvements will help guide us and the Planning Commission as we look at our future land use or our goals and objectives within the master plan as well. So that helps kind of narrow in the focus of what residents and respondents are indicating they would like to see enhanced, we'll say, throughout the village. Further to the online survey engagement we did, we also conducted business surveys where village staff and myself went and attended 4 different local businesses, and I believe village staff even hit up additional ones in about a 3 to 4 week process. And of those, this is listed as your supplemental in here, we found that the most positive aspects were dining and entertainment options, sense of community, activities, festivals, events, and the history of the area. These were, just for us, background a little bit too for the trustees, this was a 4 or 5 question survey. This was not as depth online surveys we had in the past. We wanted to be able to solicit quick feedback from patrons at the businesses. We didn't want to interrupt their meals more than necessary. We wanted them to be able to see this, fill out their thoughts, hand it back to us as well. So from there, past the positive aspects, we also looked at what needs improvement. We wanted to structure it not as a sense of what don't you like, but what would you like to see improved upon within the village. Of those, more entertainment and dining nightlife, greater variety in retail, thriving downtown area, and better or more parks and recreation were the top 4 listed out in the supplemental survey. So that was in there. Questions on the public engagement. I think overall, between the 3 public open houses we held, the online survey, supplemental respondents, we had close to probably 300, maybe 320 or so in there. And we figured about 10 to 12% of the village population. Supplemental, though, we will indicate, did have patrons, so they may not have lived within the village, but they are coming to the village for a reason to visit businesses. So it's still prudent for us to collect that. But overall, over 300 respondents to some kind of form of public engagement for the village for the master plan update. I'll pause there for.
I think it's noteworthy to highlight at the Planning Commission meeting, member Chris Newman was a part of the last couple updates and comprehensive updates, and I think Mr. Frisbee was involved back then, but at the Planning Commission meeting, Mr. Newman made a point that he felt the public engagement this during this project, the public engagement had increased notably from the past.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. So after that, we also dived into a housing analysis. This was a brief overview. This is not a 100-hour analysis. This was more just to get to the point to help fill in some of the gaps that we found are missing. As Mr. Miller has indicated, I think in past council meetings as well, there is a significant drive in the county and the region itself for housing options. So this is not just a Vicksburg concern or Vicksburg issue. This is a regional issue itself. Housing is a very pressing concern throughout not only the county, but the state as well. A lot of municipalities are trying to focus more investment into housing options, housing stock, housing enhancements, development grants, and so forth. So of that, what we found, based on our housing analysis, is, and this took into account the populations, death rates, migration rates, and is all very subject to change in conditions that we obviously don't have a lot of control over. So I do want to preface that this is a projected number based on the model and data that we had available to us. We could probably do this once a year and get different numbers every year based on birth rate, death rates, migrations, all that fun stuff. So of that, within the next 17 years, by the year 2040, we found that there is an estimated population of 4,941 residents within the village. And of that, a projected need of 1,930 housing units. So based on the 2020 census data and looking at the next 17 years, we currently have 1,494 housing units. Okay, this is census data, so what we had available to us, it may be more refined if we had building permits or so forth, but this is from the US Census that we had, we found that a total of 436 more housing units would be required to satisfy this projection number. So whether that be single family, multifamily, accessory dwelling units, that would be the need between now and the next 17 years by 2040 to be able to accommodate the 4,941 residents and projected. Mr. Mallory, any other comments on the housing?
Well, it also tailored with the greater look at Southwest Michigan, specific Kalamazoo County, and there's bigger entities with deeper pockets that are really studying the future needs and projected housing that will sustain a workforce and population into the future. And what they're finding out and the data is concluding is we're tens of thousands of units of housing short into the future in this area, and specifically in the affordable housing market and in your workforce housing, which then looks at how can the village of Vicksburg be a small cog in the bigger wheel and part of a positive direction for this shortfall. We get this feedback from our industrial partners and our recruitment of future industrial of the available housing for their workforce, and that's where we then, through this master plan process, look at what areas currently within the village that we could look for appropriate residential zoning that might be multi-housing units, traditionally apartment building or workforce type housing that will have benefit to the village of Vicksburg, greater benefit to the greater Kalamazoo area. We have huge employers, hundreds of millions of dollars. The Pfizer Corporation and Stryker Corporations are investing to bring a workforce here. And we have the village of Vicksburg speaks for itself. So I'll just humbly say they can visit and then they'll want to buy a house. So we need to get that available for everyone to participate. So.
Yes, sir.
Just to add a comment from the Planning Commission last week, to put in perspective the additional 436 houses that are mentioned, basically the Centennial development would have to double. I'm not saying it will, no disinformation please in the community. Just to put it in perspective, that development would need to double in order to meet the 400 plus houses that were mentioned. The one thing that also came up, and I appreciate Kyle if you might be able to mention it, and that is how static the village was as far as housing development until the Centennial development 20 years ago was, they broke ground on it. Do you remember those comments that you made? Because I thought those were pretty telling.
No, I don't have that in front of us. We can definitely provide that for it. It'd be going back through as well census data to see over the from 1990 to kind of see how many housing units have been there every 10-year increments. There's also the American Community Survey ACS data we can look at as well. Mr. Holmes, not to correct you, but to help shed additional light too, it'd be 436 housing units, not so much a single family itself. So whether that be multifamily style apartments, duplexes, units itself. So yes, it was the comment made that Centennial would have to double to accommodate this. I do want to dispel any concerns that Centennial will double. It just is how many units. So again, whether those be apartment style, single family homes, duplexes, whatever we eventually get to in the next 15, 20 years. I do want to dispel the concerns that, like Mr. Holmes said, it would need to double. So it's units, not homes itself.
We'll dispel the construction of a high-rise apartment building too before that inquiry comes.
So wanted to clarify that. And
I appreciate it, Cal, but to put it in perspective though, we haven't built too many apartment complexes in the community in the last 20 years.
Yeah.
So what have we built? So that's why that's being used as a reference, because most people can visualize 400 houses, units.
Yeah, I remember that conversation. I think member Newman initiated it through his personal experience and if you look at the census data going back for the village of Vicksburg, pretty stagnant in the 1500 to 1800 range up until about 2008-9, and then you track a little bit of increase, and then from 2013 to present, it's steady. And we'll get into it in my report, how that positively impacts the village, both in state shared revenue and people participating downtown, but there was those comments of making that housing available brought people, and we're now completing phase 4 of that project some 16 years later.
And last quick comment, and Jim, that's actually why I asked the comment about it, is because it does lead to exactly what you said, and that is, you see this economic revitalization, and that is simply because of the money that's been invested in the community and the development that's happened here. And so it was a positive thing. That was the comment that came through the planning commission last week.
And any other questions on the housing analysis, comments on that? Mr. Mallory did tie on to, looking at future land uses. That is something we'll discuss with staff over the next few weeks, and then from there tie into presentations to Planning Commission next month. Luckily, I brought my own copy, so I don't have to try to turn my head to the side there. So, yeah.
That schooling's paying off already.
So, Mr. Miller, you can scroll up just a little bit further to key 1 there for me. So we put together some key findings based on so far the public engagement that we've done, the analysis we've been able to conduct as well, and the Planning Commission, Mr. Holmes, maybe you can talk to this a little bit more, but they were relatively silent on the findings. So I would like any additional feedback with staff's permission, just kind of if you would agree that these findings and then further recommendations are in kind of the direction you're seeing, or if we need to continue to work further with staff on refining these. We don't want to obviously go one direction too far and then not really have it be the wish of the council or planning commission and the residents. So key finding number 1 was in dealing with retail, finding that increase the retail availability within the village to offer a variety of shopping, dining options to residents and visiting patrons. And then our recommendation on that is to strategically expand the commercial designation within the downtown area and commercial corridors. This will increase retail options and strengthen the commercial fabric of the community. This would be done to ensure minimal impact to the surrounding residential land uses as well. So again, that's strategically, that's a struggling word today, strategically expand commercial designation within the downtown area. I can pause after everyone, Mr. President, or we can walk through it and then discuss. I serve at your pleasure how you'd like us to do any kind of feedback. Oh, perfect. No, I know you guys have already been here, so I'll keep going. No problem. Finding number 2, downtown. Encourage multi-use buildings within the downtown region, such as along Main Street and Prairie Street, to permit both commercial enterprises and residential dwellings. Recommendation is to foster both commercial and residential growth based on community input, establish a mixed-use district in a defined area of the downtown. This zone would be prioritize commercial space on the ground floor with residential units on the upper floors. By allowing flexible use of the space, this district can help with the village to expand its residential housing options while promoting commercial development. There did seem to be some confusion from Planning Commission in the past about what a mixed-use district is. Again, that is this allowing 2 types of use within that corridor or that area as well. Again, our intent would be to help foster that commercial use on the ground floor, and then from there, if there's a second or third story, allow retail apartments or dwelling units above that. It allows you to kind of get more bang for your buck of land. Obviously, as we know within the village, land's a scarce commodity. We only have so much more of it left. So this would be a direction to pursue further potentially. Number 3, housing. Encourage appropriate housing development to meet the projected demand for residential dwellings in the next 20 years. Encourage redevelopment in existing housing stock to enhance existing neighborhoods. Our recommendation here is to suggest increasing the residential density in carefully evaluated locations to accommodate the demands of a rising population and satisfy the preferences of current residents. And what we mean by this is look at how many units are permitted per acre to see if by increasing that slightly, moderately within line of our master plan, if that would help service the demand for housing in our area and allow us to achieve probably a goal and objective of our metrics. This would not be to go from, let's say, 2 units on an acre to 10 units on an acre. It would be a step-incremental increase. It would be working with village staff, council as well to find the appropriate amount of potential density changes. Again, I want to highlight that potential, nothing, firm, nothing on that regard. This would all be obviously additionally coordinated with staff on what the direction of the village is and what the capacity is. Finding number 4 was to the non-motorized networks. What we mean by that is bike trails, sidewalks, multi-use paths, and then to encourage the expansion of non-motorized networks within the village to permit multimodal transportation options. Multimodal, again, being walking, biking, rollerblades if you have them, skateboards, other non-motorized areas. And of there, our recommendation is to revise the zoning ordinance to mandate installation of pedestrian pathways such as sidewalks in all new developments. This would eventually help to tie residential districts into each other and then help get residents from like the north side of the village to downtown by use of multi-paths such as along 22nd Street or increasing sidewalk expansions as well. So that was another key finding based on the public input we received. I'll stop there for Mr. Mallory in case he's got any questions or follow-up he'd like to make.
No, I'm good, good.
Thank you. Timeline, we're currently obviously in May. We did discuss some of this with the Planning Commission, talked about the various tasks that we have coming up for June. We'll be working with village staff on kind of the future land use recommendations, looking at what was approved or adopted in 14 and 15 through the master plan, and if there's areas that could be subject to additional evaluation or change based on the public input we received, and then presenting that to Planning Commission as well. In June, July, our goal is to present a draft master plan to the Planning Commission, which will then ultimately make a recommendation to the Village Council to...
Next slide.
Thank you. And then make a recommendation to Village Council to set the required 63-day public comment period, which would then bring us into October, presenting the final draft master plan to the Planning Commission with any potential changes that were received during public comment. And then from there, having the Planning Commission make a hopefully positive finding and recommendation to Village Council for adoption in October. So that is our timeline working with village staff on. We feel like it is accomplishable, setting out some new metrics as well with village staff of where we need to be. If there is concerns with, potentially the direction of the draft as well from the public, that's what the 63-day public comment period is for as well. It's a state mandate, but it does allow anyone to have input on the master plan process as presented. That will also be sent out to our adjoining municipalities, Schoolcraft Township, Brady Township, City of Portage, because we do border them a little bit, and so forth. It also gets sent to the school districts and then utility providers and railroad companies as well. So at least they'll get a link. So if they'd like to comment, they'll have that 63-day public comment period to do so.
Mr. Mucha, one thing that I've heard some discussion from recently, even say in the Centennial neighborhood, is something that might be involved in our master plan. You referenced utility companies and railroads, expanding the access to broadband, like fiber optic internet and those services. Would that be something that can be an inclusion into this master plan?
Yeah, we could work with village staff on creating a goal or objective of that. I do know there is, because of the recent infrastructure bills that were passed about a year or two ago, there is financial ability out there. I know where Vicksburg would qualify. I'd defer to Mr. Mallory on that, but there is significant funding to expand broadband across the U.S. based on those bills. So again, I don't know what that stands, if that's more for the rural areas, but I believe Michigan is getting some of that as well, and then it gets trickled down from there. So there is funding out there. I do know that. So but yes, those kind of ideas, Mr. Wagner, can be added into our goals and objectives of the master plan as well.
Perfect. Thank you.
Jim, in realizing we're looking for public comment in July, is that when water bills go out in July, the quarterly water bills? Would it be possible to put a word in there to make them aware of?
Yes, it is, both counts.
Okay.
If I can, President Frisbee, a couple things out of all the self-appointed titles I've given myself. My favorite is operating the Deuce, the plow truck. My absolute least favorite is director of IT in these presentations. And I just want to highlight, while somehow that thing went sideways and people were snickering, giggling, laughing, my good friend John Kern simply turned his head sideways and didn't make a motion. So I do appreciate everyone else's patience, but I want to make note that Mr. Kern just accommodated what the pitch that was thrown. So, and the other thing, it's never been more cold in this room. There's an air duct blowing on Christian and I at about 40 degrees. And I've determined we must have a rotten banana back here because I'm swarmed with fruit flies. But we can continue on and make it through here. Thank you, Kyle. I do appreciate it, and we're moving forward.
I just have one quick question. You said that the input that you got from the community was like 10 to 12%, so about 300 people. Is that a good percentage? Is that a,
From a survey standpoint, we would probably consider anything from like 2 to 5 normal responses. So for us to get 10 to 12 is pretty phenomenal, especially given our side. I know we've tried numerous options to get out there. Unfortunately, the past probably year and a half, or ever since really 2020, when everyone's been home, a lot of residents or in general across the state or even the region are just so survey fatigued. They just every day, every email you get, take a survey, take a survey, take a survey. So phone call, everything like that. So for us to get 300 respondents, and again, Mr. Mallory, I want to give kudos to for his staff to literally hit the pavement and walk some of those businesses as well to solicit feedback. That got us close to 100 plus just through that from us posting up in businesses and his staff going to other local businesses asking for input as well. So that actually did better than our online survey. So.
that's great.
So, Nick, there, and I think we had close to 80, maybe south around 70 for public engagement through the 3 open houses. So, that's what.
Kyle, do you think that we should expect more public comments than those that took the survey? And I say that because of what you just said, and I appreciate what Wendy was saying, because of the survey fatigue that's out there. One of the things that, just in talking with the general public, it does seem that if we're a little more focused on saying this is what the village is going to be focused on in the next 5 years, now they know exactly, their field of vision is a little bit more narrow than them coming with all their ideas to the table. So I'm just curious, from your organization's perspective, what we may anticipate.
Every day is different, Mr. Holmes. You might get one resident, you might get 100 showing up. For example, not to take more time, the mega site in Marshall received hundreds of people, and I think they had public comment until like 2 a.m. because that impacted them. Yes, so you guys want to try to break that record? I mean, I'll filibuster when we do the draft here. I'll just sit up here if you'd like. So it depends on where the residents at and what they feel is the most impactful to them. A visionary document that is going to be for the next 20 years may not elicit as much public engagement after the fact than a survey did, as compared to a EV battery plant that's going in. That's going to be right next door. So I don't really believe, depending too on how much we market it, we'll get those who are interested for sure, and then others who are great as long as my toilet's flush and my lawn gets mowed. I don't really care what you do, to be crass kind of deal in that regard. I know Mr. Mallory has done extensive to try to get the word out there as well, to get this out and promoted. So I don't have a good answer for you on that. I don't know what the residents are gonna feel like. We can continue to promote throughout and let it know and put it on the website, but we might get one comment, we might get 50. I don't have a good feel for you on that one.
Any other questions for Kyle?
Thank you, Kyle.
Thanks for your update. Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Kyle. And the same thing, realize you're a father of 4 now, is it? Or 3 twins and everything else? Maybe if I suggest, I know we start at 6 o'clock and we take a 3 to 5 minute break and then restart
We
and
can do
finish
that,
this
yeah.
off. Okay.
Do we need to, or, just went into the bathroom. We'll just take somebody make a motion that we take a 3-minute break.
So moved.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We'll return back at 2 minutes till 8.
Hi, I'm Cindy Hetrick, 120 North Wilson, and I appreciate being nominated to be on the Parks and Recs. And I just want to tell everyone that they do such a great job. I've enjoyed myself thoroughly coming and attending these meetings. I didn't set out to be on the Parks and Recs. I just wanted to come and learn more about my local government and be involved in some way. And it just happened that this opportunity arose, and I was like, okay, I think I'll do it. So I'm here, and hopefully I'll do a good job, as good a job as what you guys are all doing. And I appreciate every one of you and your staff. Thank you.
Yeah, Cindy, I'd like to say that that was my issue as well, is you just show up in the audience and eventually they ask you to start doing more. So it's contagious that way.
I vote to approve.
Trustee Holmes, I second.
Motion was made by trustee Fields, second by trustee Holmes. We'll do a roll call, please. Christian?
Trustee Fields,
Yes.
Trustee Wagner,
Yes.
Trustee Olson,
Yes.
Trustee Reister,
Yes.
Trustee Holmes,
Yes.
President Pro Tem Keller,
Yes.
President Frisbee.
Yes. No turning back now. Thank you. We look forward to it.
For life.
We got some in the background there. Should we have in front of us a resolution, is it, Mr.
Yes,
Mallory?
if I can go ahead and read this
Absolutely,
into the
please do.
record, a brief background of this. In specific to the village of Vicksburg, I'll get more into it in the manager's presentation. But in 2018, it was not a hard decision because the data is what we evaluate and led us to move from a defined benefit pension program to defined contribution for future employees, because we did an analytical look at the pension system, which over the previous 8 to 10 years had fallen dramatically from the upper 70 level being presented. And I think around that time period, it was 63 or 61% and tracking downward. So in the time since Vicksburg made that, and again, when I say it wasn't a difficult decision, but it's a hard decision when you're impacting employees or future employees. And but in the last 5 years, we've moved from that 61% that was tracking downward to the last evaluation of the pension system had a 70% funded. So since we made that decision, it's now moving in the appropriate level, and our longtime liabilities have been reduced by 6 figures. But what the state legislation, they have about $750 million earmarked for pension relief to communities that are below 60%. And the original budget through subcommittees had $250 million available for communities above 60% funded. It would be a competitive grant process. But there's been movement that took out that opportunity for communities above 60%. And so a group, many communities, it's gaining momentum. I talked about this previously. And so I have the following resolution to read and asking for a motion and support, and then a roll call vote. And then tomorrow we'll stamp it with our seal and send it in with a group to the representatives in our area, as well as the group effort of the group of communities that are above 60% funded, and hopefully we can get this $250 million back in the state budget. But the following, so it's occurring here on May 15th, 2023, whereas the Village of Vicksburg has taken financially difficult steps to stabilize its pension program and get its pension costs and liabilities under control, And whereas these steps followed best practices established by the state of Michigan and the village of Vicksburg, operationally viable in the face of enormous financial pressure. And whereas HB 5054 of 2022 would have divided $250 million between the village of Vicksburg and other communities like it that made the tough decisions and followed those best practices. And whereas the village of Vicksburg and others like it are ineligible for $750 million in pension relief allocated by the state in 2022, despite experiencing the same pension-related financial stresses as those who will receive that relief, and whereas these stresses have been amplified by market losses in 2022 and a volatile market in 2023, and whereas this $250 million would have immeasurable impact on our ability to address our pension liabilities, maintain employment levels, and provide the services our taxpayers depend upon. And whereas both the $750 million allocated and the $250 million requested here had broad bipartisan support in the House a year ago, and whereas HB 5054 created an equitable balance between those with pensions the House considered substantially underfunded and those who had followed best practices to achieve higher funding ratio, and whereas unallocated revenues are available to the state in 2023 to again make this pension assistance equitable by helping those communities struggling with pension cost but ineligible for the 500 or 750 million. Therefore, be it resolved that the Village Council of the Village of Vicksburg asks the State of Michigan Legislature and Governor's Office to revisit HB 5054, and be it further resolved that the Legislature and Governor give bipartisan support to the inclusion of the $250 million in the 2023 state budget to be divided between communities, including the Village of Vicksburg, that meet the best practices required in that bill.
We have a request in front of us to adopt this resolution. What's this council's desire?
President Frisbee, I so move as presented.
Trustee Wagner, I support.
Any other discussion or questions of staff on this? Hearing none. Christian, would you do a roll call, please?
Trustee Reister,
Yes.
Trustee Wagner,
Yes.
Trustee Fields, President Pro Tem Keller,
Yes.
Trustee Holmes,
Yes.
Trustee Olson,
Yes.
President Frisbee.
Yes. Motion carries. Thanks, Jim.
It's O2.
Just,
It's O2.
Point of order. Let the record reflect that the resolution we just adopted should be 05152023-02.
Yes, that's what we read into it, but yep.
all right, that takes us to Mr. Mallory's report.
Yes, I was very fortunate to represent the village of Vicksburg in Lansing last Thursday. The village was a recipient of a statewide recognition award for the improvements to Oswald Park as well as the streetscapes downtown, presented by the American Society of Civil Engineers. So it was a statewide award. It was attended by probably 200 people. So it was nice. We brought the plaque in that'll hang in the walls of the new village hall once it's built. But so that was very fortunate to receive. The village hall update, and then I'll move back to B. But the village hall update is, you've seen where the land has been cleared. Today we had bulldozers pushing back dirt. Now we'll start some compression testing the soil to make sure everything goes well, but you'll see daily progress as we're moving on Village Hall, and an exciting time. So any questions on the first two? Seeing none. On we did, met with the Human Resource Committee, we had an initial conversation on compensation for employees. It will be presented to the full council June 19th. We talked a little bit at the work session, what goes into that, but in a broader sense, taking time in a regular scheduled council meeting, just some things have happened as each year. This is the budget season that I love, prepping a fiscal year new budget, closing one out, and getting into the numbers and the finances. Just tonight, we took action on a resolution to have our voice heard in Lansing at the state of Michigan. We have followed best practices. We have had improvement to our pension liabilities, and I believe that will continue to track in a positive direction. And it fits what this journey has been. As we talked at the 6 o'clock work session, behind the scenes, I certainly would be remiss if I didn't credit Michelle Morgan, Scott Sanderson, Randy Skippers, and Christian for their participation in the different programs that they run within and we're responsible for to execute here in the village, providing their internal needs, wants, and wishes that started back in January. Back in March, we started to look at a 10-year trend for the village of Vicksburg, analyzing at that higher level. We really focused on the last 5 years since 2018 on this budget process that we're going through. And I think numbers that are important for our community to hear are our revenues went up. We have 7 revenue streams in the village. We operate 9 different business functions within the village, meaning general fund, major roads, local roads, golf, the golf course, water, sewer, brownfield, downtown development association. In 2018 to now, our local tax base is up 24.85%. To the point that we were making during Mr. Mooch's presentation, the growth in the village, which impacts state shared revenue. Our state shared revenue is up 45.45%, which is fairly substantial. We have experienced recognition at the state and federal level for funding a new village municipal building with cash. So our cash assets, that's cash on hand, for the last 5 years has grown 74.56%. And a lot of that will be the cash that we build the building with. But we also have tremendous physical assets in building the DPW building for cash, the different, whether it's a pickup truck, anything purchased over $5,000 through the competitive bid process becomes a asset to the village. And I'm reminded about that, and I have talked that one, it takes a team effort to be honed in on the village finances, both the receivables and what we're going to expend. Because of all those numbers, tax revenue up 24.85 due to the growth. State shared revenue due to the increase in people living in the village up 45%, cash assets up 74%, is probably the most important is the expenditure ratio during that same period, because it would be a neutral case if we just spent all the new money. Our expenses over that 5-year period are just over 13% in total for the 5-year period. And that is kind of a summary of what always leads in January for us to have the ability, as we've done, to commit money to certain projects, assign money to a CIP plan, and that wasn't always the case. And I'm not shy about it. In 2015 and 2016, it's not Jim Mallory's words, but the fact in the data are stubborn. There was multiple deficiencies the auditors filed with the state of Michigan based on their performance in 2015 and 2016, which necessitated an improvement action plan being written on what we were going to do. We don't need to go into great detail or relive all the specific occurrences, but to say that where we are now, it wasn't luck, and I'm not going to shy away from it. It took a dedicated staff. It takes the names I mentioned before, and I'm going to highlight Michelle Morgan now. Michelle answers the phone 10 at night to a Saturday afternoon to when she's has family situations that draw attention in Minnesota, and I have a mental block and call her, and then as she picks up, remember, oh goodness, but she always answers the phone and gives solid advice when it comes, especially to prepping a budget or how we prepare this. Having said that, you know, one thing I think that needs to be highlighted is when I started working for the village 1 day a week and helping out in just the areas of police is where the first attention was, a little bit on fire, but it was really police. I became in contact and had the privilege of working for and alongside Ken Skippers. And I said it at Ken's retirement, and I mean it to this minute. It's rare you find a person in government service that has a heart like Ken Skippers to serve. And boy, did Ken fill a need for the village of Vicksburg at a time where people needed to be able to trust who was leading this village. And he filled that beautifully. And it always impacted me how I think he knew everyone on a first name basis. And they didn't have to be here that long. So I wanted to highlight that. That gets lost a little bit. But the challenges that were faced early on were absolutely there. And I just, again, as we go through this budget process and you start looking at this numbers, if we stick to the plan, which the plan is an ever-evolving 5-year plan. So we're in 23-24 fiscal year, but internally we're talking about 2, 3, 4, 5 years of capital opportunities and true impact that will be unparalleled if we stick to the plan by communities our size. And we're going to build off the momentum that's been generated and really dedicate ourselves to that service and making this community irresistible to visit and see what's going on downtown, in our neighborhoods, in our walkability, and I look forward to the future. So that's my report tonight.
Thank you, Jim.
President Frisbee?
Sure.
Yeah, Jim, this is, number one, congratulations on the award last Thursday. Well-deserved by staff, and so I appreciate that. So it's unrelated. The Berg Days of Summer, can you explain, because I had a Lions Club meeting last week, and I know we're on the docket for June 28th, I think that's the date, that the Lions Club has been asked to participate. Can you give me just a brief overview of number of volunteers needed from the club, what's going to be expected, just so I can report back to the club?
Yeah, it's I had sent emails out, but within that, we're looking for at minimum 3 volunteers. We'll offer space for the nonprofits. Each Wednesday, there are 9 out of 10 Wednesdays from June 14th to August 16th. We're not going to have this the week of July 4th. Each week we'll highlight a nonprofit organization that has impact on Village of Vicksburg residents and visitors. the Lions Club being one of them, but there's others. So we're looking for at minimum 3 volunteers. So we'll not only highlight and make part of our marketing strategy that week, that organization, but we're also going to provide opportunities within those nights' activities that will be fundraising opportunities for the nonprofit. Also, with the assistance of Frederick's Construction, we're coming up with something that we can put in the middle of Prairie and Maine, where people participating to where there'll be live music on Prairie Street, live music on Main Street, 6 food trucks, 1 dessert truck. We have a company that will bring in activities such as a 32-foot rock climbing wall 1 week, mechanical bulls 1 week, dunk tanks, blow up obstacle courses, but all for free. But people will have the opportunity to donate to that nonprofit. And what we're looking for is it to be just a complete 360 win. The people who participate coming downtown, enjoying that outdoor walkable, the retail shop exposures, and these nonprofits.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Thanks, Jim, for those updates. Appreciate it myself. So it takes us to committee reports. I understand tree committee is going to meet this week yet.
Yep.
Parks and Rec, was there a recent meet, Wendy?
Our next meeting is next Monday.
Yes, and as is CATS is next Wednesday. Planning Commission was this past Monday, was it?
It was, much was covered. Thank you, Trustee Keller. You killed me on that last one when you reviewed everything about, I was all excited about telling them about the climbing wall and the 6 food trucks, but you know, I digress. But no, pretty much what Kyle mentioned as well. The one thing that was actually a motion was raised to have the village manager enter into an agreement for $4,900 for marketing support for the Berg Days of Summer, as well as the birthday event and then Christmas in the Village. And so we're gonna use a professional company to go out and to assist us in getting the word out about the various events that are coming up. Mr. Mallory, is there any additional comments on that you'd like to make?
No, but that 4,900 is divided between 2 years, so I think this fiscal year we'll have 3,000, the next one 1,900, but looking forward to it.
So South County Sewer is next Tuesday. The fire meeting is?
We have a fire board meeting this Wednesday here at 6 o'clock, so.
So we'll have a few updates at our next meeting on that. Now's the time for citizens' comments for non-agenda items. Seeing none, we'll move on to trustees' time. I'll start with Trustee Olson.
Thank you. Real quick, in case you haven't been out and around, Osterhout Road, I take that a lot to run over to Shaver, Myers and that. They, down just before you get to Oakland, there's a pump station there. They are gonna go down to 1 lane, and for about 2 months, to rebuild that pump station. So that's gonna add to the headache in that area, because Shaver Road right now, from Oakland Drive all the way to US 131, they're doing construction there, and then of course US 131 from U Avenue all the way to Three Rivers. I got the opportunity to drive that again the other day, and it's pretty much flowing pretty good, but you're only gonna be doing 40, 45 all the way. If you need to get around and you don't wanna put up with the construction, the only thing I can say is Oakland Drive. You can run Oakland Drive from out here all the way up to Kalamazoo, and Oakland Drive is about the fastest flowing road in the area right now. So Sprinkle Road at the railroad tracks is closed. So, and that's gonna be at least for another week and a half, 2 weeks. I talked to Chief McMillan today, walked in, and I got to talk to him for probably about 2 minutes. There was a rollover accident last night at U Avenue and Portage, and I was concerned about that. Thank God no one was hurt. There was also another accident just south of the railroad tracks over on Portage Road the other night. Somebody rode a bicycle off the road and slammed into a telephone pole. So I just wanted to make sure no one was hurt on that. But to tell you how busy they are, and they will never be given enough respect. They got an emergency call while I was there out in Fulton, medical. McMillan responded to that, and 30 seconds later, they got another call in Schoolcraft. So the pressure that our firefighters and police department are under, we can never imagine unless we're part of them. So I thank God for both our police and fire every day. Thank you.
Thank you, Denny. Trustee Wagner.
Yeah, a lot of the comments we had this evening, they brought up what we'd seen actually regionally for some recognition was the Encore magazine that spoke really highly of the village. A lot of the past events, like Jim had spoke to previously about where we were, where we've come through, and great right up there that we received a lot of positive press, and I think that's just another testament to this group, our staff, our management, and the direction the community's taking as a whole. So I've gotten a lot of feedback on that. Mostly almost all positive, but it's just another reminder that we're moving in that right direction, and I think we're taking another couple steps of that this evening as we've reviewed the budget process, and we're moving that forward into the next fiscal year. So
Ditto that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Trustee Reister.
Yeah, I have shared that article too with a lot of people, friends of mine in Kalamazoo. Everybody's been very impressed with it. I was very impressed with it. I thought they did a nice job of the write-up. I would like to also plug tonight, I know that we're having the Old Car Festival coming up, and quite often the annual library book sale does not get mentioned. And so, because I'm in charge of it, I'm mentioning it tonight. And I want you to know that it's not just open on Saturday, but it's open all day Friday from 8 to 5, or from 10 to 5, all day Saturday from 10 to 5. And then on Monday, June 12th, we are open from 10 to 1, $2 a bag. Please come.
I'll be here.
Thanks, Gail. Trustee Fields.
Through the working session, when we were looking at the budget information for staff and all the staff, and then hearing, again, the recap of everything that the staff has accomplished in these past years since you've been on board, and a lot of these people have been on board. I'm well aware of the labor issues, not just locally, but across the entire country. So the fact that you are putting such an emphasis on retention of the exemplary staff that we have currently in place, I think I'm very grateful that you're looking at that and putting as much emphasis on that as you are, because especially in this age, keeping that staff, you're not going to replace them at the drop of a hat. So we have a really good staff, and I really appreciate that everybody appreciates that. So that's it.
Trustee Holmes.
Would like to echo the comments that Trustee Wagner made regarding the positive, the continued positivity expressed towards our village, whether it's the Encore magazine or Jim, I'd like to thank you for nominating the village for that award, and also for attending it and bringing it home for us. It's a continuation of everything we should be proud of, and I think we sense that here, and the sincere appreciation of this group up here for what you and the staff do every day. I'll also want to say very quickly, you've heard me make some comments about spending time with Jim today. I've been on the finance committee 6 years. I've been in 30 years. I've been in the finance world business from a business perspective, and I feel I have somewhat of an understanding of things. And as Professor Keller stated very clearly, there is a difference between business and government. And I I graciously accept that, but I just want to thank Jim today because it's amazing when you really talk with Jim, how patient he can be sometimes when you ask questions, some of which can be clear or unclear. And the thing that was really fascinating today that, for me at least, the takeaway that I really had is the continued passion that Jim has and how personal he takes what he does. I mean, the one thing I thought was really interesting is that, do you realize that we hear about the comments from the auditor? Do you realize that for the most part, there's some corrections that Jim doesn't necessarily need to do, and those comments would come through, and they're comments. But the thing is, he has such a sense of pride in what he does that he spends time amending the budget to ensure there's no year-end comments. Is that correct, Mr. Mallory? So think about that. This guy's working hard over here just because, you know, some pencil neck is going to say, you know, hey, listen, move some money over here, you know?
Don't call him a pencil.
Well, we pay, all right, the auditors, okay? All right,
Motivation
please,
here.
please strike that. But I think everyone understands the sincerity that I'm expressing, that, Jim, thank you for what you do for you and the staff. It's much appreciated. The last comment I just want to make, or the question I have is this, and that is, has the Little League come back and submitted an application yet?
No, I had communication with the Little League but with members of the Little League. I don't know if they're on the board or that. But no, I have not heard from a board member, and I supplied the council with the series of emails it was early February, I believe, that I gave multiple options, including options that would have the parade and include the potential of having candy involved in the parade. And I never heard back from those recommendations I provided in February.
Okay. Maybe offline we can talk, because I feel that those kids deserve their day. And I know you've served on the board. You may know some people there, Jim, whoever, but these kids deserve that parade. And I don't know why these adults are doing it, but I think maybe if someone can strike up a conversation with them, we might be able to give those kids that opportunity. So, thank you.
Thanks, Rick. President Pro Tem Keller.
First of all, I want to apologize to the council for the delay of game that I caused. I'll use my football vernacular. So I do apologize, but I think there are a few people that did appreciate it. I do also want to echo the Encore article. I think it was an excellent article. I think it speaks a lot to what this community's been about the last 5-6 years, at least since Rick and I have been on the council, along with President Frisbee. And also, I appreciate the effort that Mr. Mucha did with the master plan. President Frisbee and I were involved in the last master plan when we were on the Planning Commission. And it's a heavy lift, and I know Rick's been involved with this one. It's a heavy lift. I think this time around, though, I think there's been a lot more engagement from what I've seen, which is excellent to see. So that people aren't thinking that we're the ones that are just deciding where we want to go, that there's a lot more voices to be heard with that. So other than that, thank you.
Well, I think you've heard it from all the council members tonight, Jim, our thanks. You know, there's a lot of successes we've had. There are numerous tonight, and I'm not going to go into them, but I will at a later date. I want to thank you for taking the time to meet individually today with the trustees. You brought a new trustee on, spent some time, got her up to speed. I think her comfort level is better. So Jim's always been open to us, right? So I encourage you, when Jim puts out these requests to us in an email saying he's willing to meet one-on-one, take the time, you know, your needs, wishes, wants, follow up with him. Let's all follow up with him. Take the time. He's taking time for us. Let's reciprocate and give him the time back so he can make some good decisions based on, you know, our input. Thank you for ever fix this chair, Kristen. Good job. You're hired. It's not falling back.
Okay. Christmas gift's gonna be for the council.
one hell of a chair is what it's gonna be.
So a couple quick things, I'll get through them here. The strategy session that Peter Dams and this team did, he gave us his final rollout. There's some action items by all of us. I know we're heavy into the budget season, but let's not lose sight of that. Please get it out, review it, read it. Let's act on that stuff too. We just don't file this away in our cabinet and forget about it. And Jim, thanks for taking the time out with the trustees. It's been much appreciated. And congratulations to the American Society of Civil Engineers Award.
Yeah.
Tremendous encore. So many wonderful things happening in this community right now. We are working on HR as soon as I can meet with the other two to free up some time for the manager evaluation this time of year, June budget season. We need to get that done in June, so we're going to be coming to you pretty quick. Also, the Berg Days of Summer. We want to have council members there. Remember, we talked about meet the council. So we know when it is. Let's all put together a sheet. It'd be easier for me, if you just tell me of dates you cannot meet.
I'll be there the 28th.
But you have another responsibility for the council.
Suit on?
So
Yeah.
I'm gonna put out a notice to everybody with the days, and you can just put what day fits you best. And we'll organize, at least have 2 or 3 of us there at every meeting, all right? John Geisler had sent me a note, and I was hoping Wendy would still be here, but the county commission is creating an open data citizen oversight and advisory committee. And it's, well, it's to do what our staff does, is to be out in the open and, show their fiscal responsibility, transparency in everything they do. So I'll just mention this, if anybody's really into the data, I won't use the term pencil like geek, but if anybody enjoys the data side of the world and what we can do as a county to better inform the community of, their information to the public, coordination efficiencies of agencies, reach out to this phone number, 269-384-8111. If anybody's interested, they're going to take a one advisory committee person out of the what do we have, 9 commission districts. So I think that covered everything I wanted to say. So I appreciate everyone here tonight. Entertain a motion to adjourn unless there's anything else.
So move.
All those
Support.
in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay. Meeting is